Now let us begin with the first activity, fill in the blanks with the words from the passage. Now the first one is Dash found a note. Now who found a note? Here we have the answer. It was actually Fritz who had knocked down an albatross, and on its leg we have a rag that was tied, and the rag contained a message or note. So the answer over here is Fritz. Now the next one. Smoking rock seemed like a reference to. Now smoking rock over here is a reference to a volcano. Now the next one. The young woman who was rescued was. Now what was the name of this young woman? Here we have it in the passage. Fritz then successfully rescued the young woman Jenny Montrose. Now the next one. Dash and dash and dash. So the three people who were going to Europe. Now here we have their details. First we have Jenny asked if anyone would support her. So of course Jenny left and she was going to England, and Fritz said that yes, I will go along with you. Then we have Franz, the youngest boy, decided to join Fritz in leaving. So the three people, first we'll write down Jenny, then Fritz and then Franz. They were all going to Europe. Now moving ahead. In this question, how did Fritz learn about another victim forsaken on a faraway island? Now of course we know it from the passage that on the shore of another island, Fritz had knocked down an albatross, a bird, which was threatening to attack him. And he found a rag tied to the large bird's leg. And on the rag was a message that an English woman had been stranded on the smoking rock. So this is how he got to know about the victim on the other island. So we'll write our answer that on the shore of another island, Fritz had knocked down an albatross, which was threatening to attack him. He found a rag tied to the large bird's leg. On the rag was a message that an English woman was stranded on a smoking rock. So we use the point that is there in the passage and we'll write our answer accordingly. Now moving ahead. Here we have to give two examples or even more that are available in the passage of collocations. Now when we talk about collocations are two words that go together but they are written away from each other. So if I say a light sleeper, so the word light and sleeper go along with each other. Early riser, or words like black and white, tall building. These are words that go together but are written away from each other. So similarly in the passage we have words such as smoking rock. Then we have a word, the next one, that is smaller islands. We also have words such as good health or even academic education. That could be the last collocation that we can mention. Now moving ahead to the next question. Here we have to give the antonyms. Now what do you mean by antonyms? Antonyms are opposite words. So depart, the opposite could be arrive. The next one, despair, that means to have no hope, to feel hopeless. The opposite could be the word hope. Now moving ahead to the next question. The first one here. Franz, the youngest boy, decided to join Fritz in leaving. Here you have to pick out the non-finite verbs and their kind. So we have to state the type of the non-finite verb. And the non-finite verb in this particular sentence is to join, which is an infinitive. The next one. Fritz felt that someone needed his help. Here we have to identify the subordinate clause and we have to state its type. So now there are three types when we talk about a subordinate clause. Subordinate noun clause, subordinate adjective clause or subordinate adverb clause. So first let us find out where is the subordinate clause in the sentence. So for that we have to first mark the finite verbs. So the first finite verb is felt and the second finite verb is needed. And then we mark the subordinator, and the subordinator is that. So once we mark the subordinator, and from the subordinator till the end of the sentence, that becomes our subordinate clause. So that someone needed his help is subordinate clause. And now for the type. Take the main clause, Fritz felt, and frame a question with what? What did Fritz feel? So the answer immediately is that someone needed his help. So the type over here is subordinate noun clause. Why? Because the subordinate clause answers the question what. Therefore, it is the subordinate noun clause. Now moving ahead. In the novel, Jack and Ernest choose to stay back on the island. Why do you think they made this choice? So why did they decide to stay on the island? Now of course we can write different answers, but based on the novel, we know that these boys wanted to stay back in a place where they had learned so many values, where they had developed from young boys to somewhere young men. They have lived over there for 10 years. They were used to living on the island. It was like their paradise. They wanted to stay with their parents and continue the same life. They wanted to stay away from all the worldly desires. So based on this, we'll write our answer. We'll start by saying that Ernest and Jack had lived on the island for 10 years and learned a lot of things for survival. And life on the island had taught them patience, and they learned to wait for things to happen at their own pace. The island was close to paradise for them. When you stay somewhere for a very long time, you build a connection with the place. Of course, here we are talking about the emotional attachment that they had with the place, and of course their parents as well. Ernest and Jack must have been emotionally attached to the place and wanted to stay along with their parents. Perhaps they never wanted to leave their parents as they were getting old as well. And they wanted to stay away from the other worldly desires and live in a peaceful environment.